Welcome to Virtual Speakeasy. I'm Kate Solis Silva, and I'm such a grateful and also joyful member of our community. Speakeasy is where we speak easily about the limitless nature of God, of love, and of life. Here, we attempt to traverse the tough and tender topics in hopes of cultivating greater understanding and grace. We're a spiritual community with a global message, as you can see from today, and we invite you to link arms in helping us to expand our reach even further. If you received a reminder text today, invite everyone to take a moment to turn within, to check in and see, is there someone else I can share this experience with? If so, copy and paste that message and send that text. Your efforts are a demonstration of love in action and the limitless nature of love. Doesn't matter if they show up. What matters is that you played your part. So great to be here with you this morning and every Sunday morning. And if this is your first time, welcome. If this is your second time, we're so happy to have you back. Our hope is that ultimately you make this your spiritual home. Our spiritual community is a place to engage. And the first step in doing so is ensuring that your full name is listed on your Zoom profile. We'd love to be able to recognize you by name throughout service. Speakeasy is the incubator of awesomeness, where we love making dreams come true and celebrating the very best of who you are and capable of being. I'm excited to open up the floor to talk more about the dynamic laws of prayer from our one and only Maureen Muldoon. And in addition to her professional accolades and where she stands here at the helm of Speakeasy, what I'm really feeling called to share about Maureen in prayer is what I witnessed over the last weekend, having some time to spend with her. And as highlighted in our newsletter about dynamic prayer, we're really talking about it's not something that we read, but it's how we live this. And what I took away from 4 days of soaking up Maureen is just how much she lives prayer on the daily, throughout her day, throughout how she shares this with others, but how it is something that she is. And really just knowing Maureen and how she's such a prowess with words, and has such a gift of storytelling. It's no wonder that she has such a gift of being dynamic in affirmative prayer. And so with that, it is my honor and my privilege to turn it over to you, Maureen.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kate. You spot it, you got it. And Irene and Josh and Mia and all of the helping hands that make this Sunday possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're talking about dynamic prayer. And so I thought I would begin with prayer. And this is a form of prayer. This is the prayer that we used to start every day when we first started our community back when it was called Sanctuary. And we would start with this prayer. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. My mom told me when I was little that prayers sung are twice as powerful. But she also told me that if I ate my carrots, my hair would grow curly. So I'm not sure I can believe everything that she told me. However, when I hear prayers sung, they do feel more dynamic, don't they? and we're entering into this series on dynamic prayer. About 17 years ago, I got licensed as a prayer practitioner. Prior to that, as Mia and Beth and I were sharing prior to this recording, we all have been immersed in prayer from maybe the first time that we, enter the world, when someone looks at you as a baby and says, "Oh my God," that's a form of prayer. And so we've all been dancing with prayer. Some of us maybe went in a little bit deeper. And I did 15 years ago. I got licensed as a prayer practitioner through the Centers of Spiritual Living. I didn't mean to become a practitioner. I was just really thirsty for God. And so I just took all the classes that my church was offering. And one day the minister called me and he said, "You took all the classes. The only thing that's left for you to move into practitioner training." And I wasn't sure that I was practitioner worthy, because I curse and I wear tube tops, and I just wasn't sure. I wanted to be a practitioner. I admired the practitioners. Oh my gosh, they just seemed to be exemplary. And but I just wasn't sure if it was for me. But there I was with my toes to the edge of this invitation, and with great trepidation, I did decide to step forward. And I had taken the affirmative prayer class earlier in my studies with this church, and I had begun using affirmative prayer with myself, with my family. But as a practitioner, I would be asked to pray for others, to pray publicly, to pray with strangers. That felt a bit overwhelming to me. But I watched myself step forward, and 4 years later, after many, many more classes and commitments and ceremonies and work writing papers. There were so many papers to write, but I really did enjoy it. For the first time, I enjoyed school. I was thrilled to arrive at my graduation. Not long after that, I got hired by the World Ministry of Prayer, and I began to pray for people 5 to 6 hours a day, a couple of days a week. And some of the happiest days of my life were spent underneath my lemon tree in Los Angeles, praying for people around the globe. They would funnel the calls into my phone, and they would call with this tender, earnest, sometimes odd requests, as I was sharing with Kate when we shared Unity, but a prayer is a prayer, so I would pray, and I got to witness the power of miracles, and I worked my way into a dynamic prayer. When I first started, it wasn't that. They were rusty, they were timid, but faith-filled all the same. They were earnest, if not eloquent, at the time. But that didn't dictate the power of the prayer. What dictated the power of the prayer was the earnestness. So before they allowed us to work on World Ministry of Prayer, we had to practice with them and rehearse and practice. And one day they finally let us on actual live calls. And I still remember my first call. It was under the gaze of my teacher and those others that were being trained with me. And we all watched each other on our first call. It was very awkward and intimidating and absolutely wonderful. And my first prayer was for this woman whose car had broken down. She was very agitated, and I answered the call, and I asked her what her name was and her information, which we were supposed to do. And she got very upset with me, and she said, "I don't want you to give you my information. I just need a prayer." And it kind of rattled me, because I thought, what the heck? I thought people who called for prayer were supposed to be nice and kind. But of course they were not. They were not always. Sometimes they were on fire and they were screaming for water, and you had to meet them where they were at. And, not too many people call the prayer line when life is going well, although, some do. Some call when they just have a baby, or when they get married, or they pass a test, or they get a job, and they just want someone to witness them in gratitude. Those prayers were always rare but wonderful. Anyway, I came to find that the woman who was on the call, my first call, her car had broken down, but she was a regular caller, so she knew that her information was already in the system. And so I just dropped the protocol of getting her name and information, and I just prayed with her. And when I did, I felt this light go on inside of me. It felt like I had found Christmas in my pocket. And when I got off the call, I went back to where the other trainees were, and they looked at me and they said, "Wow, you're glowing." And I felt like I was glowing. And that was the beginning of my knowing that all prayer was mutual, that the healing and the blessing came for both the giver and the receiver in equal measure. I wanted to begin this series with a prayer that I use every day, called the Miracle Worker Prayer. And I just wanted you to see if you could just receive the energy of it, and just be with the prayer and just see what you know and what you feel. And as we move into this series, I really want you to begin to contemplate, to study, not just the eloquence of a prayer, but the energy of a prayer. And what I want to deliver for you today is just a clean, earnest prayer. And I'm going to tell you why later on in the talk. So this prayer sounds like this. It simply says, today we begin. We just begin to tuck our chin and bow our heads and just know that God is all that there is and that we're one with it. And so we surrender all that we are to all that God would have us be. We surrender our heads and our hearts and our agendas and our desires to God's will, and we trust that God knows us and that God loves us and that God has us and holds us. And we trust that we will see miracles where we once saw lack and limitations, and that we'll be given solutions and solutions where we once saw dead ends. And we commit to remembering that we are each immersed in God's holy ecstasy and audaciousness, where all things are possible, where all things are perfect, where all things are plentiful. And we give thanks for this day of miraculous encounters where it's always, always God meeting God. And may we always remember that this grace is given to us, not just for our own good, but that we might be fearless extensions of God's love. And so for this and so much more, we give thanks and we let it be. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Now that's not necessarily a 5-step prayer, but it contains some of the elements of a 5-step prayer. Prayer is a spiritual tool that can shift your consciousness in a positive direction. It can be as simple as, I surrender. It could be as simple as, you got this. It could be as simple as, I believe in you. It could be as simple as, I know that this is going to work out for you. These are prayers. Another great prayer is, I'm ready. These are affirmative statements. They're short. They're sort of the down and dirty of the prayer. They're sort of cliff notes, fast food, prayers like, God, help me. And I know we've all said that prayer. Anna Lamont has a book entitled Help, Thanks, Pray, which are 3 of her favorite prayers. Help, thanks, wow. That's what it's called. Help, thanks, wow, not help, thanks, pray. I think I was confusing that with Eat, Pray, Love. Got my books mixed up. Anyway, these are her favorite prayers. Help, thanks, wow. And I like to add one word to that last prayer, just to simply say, wow-wee. Because I know that in prayer, we are mutually healed. And the help, the help prayer that she gives to us, that's a whole other story. The prayer that comes from that mindset of help is the prayer that comes from when you have your feet on fire. And if you're there, I actually wanted to say something kind of radical here. If your feet are on fire, if your hair are on fire, if your whole being's on fire, don't pray. Just ask to be prayed for. Now, if you've ever had the experience of enjoying a well-crafted, spicy, beautifully orchestrated, sliced and diced and carefully, consciously served up meal, and then you had the experience of eating a hasty, happy meal, you know that one meal is soul food and the other meal does not live up to its name. It's not a very happy experience. If you're interested in having a well-appointed life, you might be interested, and I hope you are, in learning how to construct well-appointed prayers. There's no reason you shouldn't have well-appointed prayers in your life. There's so many ways to pray. None of them are wrong, but there are 3 different consciousnesses with which we come to prayer. The victim consciousness will sound like that help prayer. It will sound like person on fire. God, what's happening? Take this away. Fix this, God. Why me? Why are you doing this to me, God? We know that we've probably prayed those prayers too. The warrior consciousness is I will. It's the I will prayer. I will get this done. I will make this happen. I will manifest this good. I will move this into form. And the channel prayer says, thy will be done. I will tap into and listen for the divine vision of God, not my will, but God's will. And then I will attempt to move those images and inspirations into words and declarations. The channel prayer doesn't attempt to solve the problem at the level of the problem. In fact, it doesn't attempt to even recognize the problem. Instead, it begins to recognize God. And that's the first step of affirmative prayer. God is recognized. God is all there is. God is a loving, kind, benevolent, all-knowing, omnipresent, omnipotent entity. It does not, in these prayers, we do not tell God how big our problems are, but we tell our problems how grand our God is. And that's where you want to start from. And that's why you don't want to start from that consciousness of help, because you're just going to continue to manifest more broken ass prayers. Sorry, I'm a little bit Jersey here. So we recognize that the solution is God. And when we turn to the solution, we turn to the possibilities. And it doesn't change the world, it changes our minds about the world. And here's the thing, in alignment with A Course in Miracles, here's the thing. The reason you are praying with someone is not that they have a problem. The reason that you're praying with someone is that your mind has projected an issue into the world and you have buried it in your brother so that you can keep it unhealed. But when your brother comes to you for prayer, he is saying, I think this belongs to you and me. Wowee, here we go. This is where it gets real. And this is up for healing now. So I'm bringing it to you and we get to unbury this and look at it. And now we get to heal it together. So when someone comes to you for a prayer, you can say, this belongs to me too. I'm going to assist in the healing of this equally. My consciousness must be ready to look at this because I wouldn't pray for it on my own. So somebody's coming to ask me for prayer for it. Now, never allow the ones that you pray for to place you on a pedestal, because you will fall off or be pulled off. Come less like a savior and more like a friend. And when you go to your own healers, don't put them on a pedestal. This is not magic, it's math, and it's pretty mundane math at that. It's available to everyone. See, all of these things are equally accessible to all of us, and we get to see all things as equal. If you don't put the woman who's serving you coffee on a pedestal, don't put your doctors, healers, or rock stars on a pedestal. Treat all people equally because they are. And when the leper or the pedophile or the hot, mess or the train wreck or the black hole comes to you for prayer, don't see them as anything as less than Christ. That is what a practitioner stands for. And I have had to pray those prayers. Do not disassociate from the truth and cause yourself to step into hierarchy. All of this is for all of us to heal. So, as I said, I have prayed for all manner of men in all sorts of situations. And it's okay. And it's most important not to judge them. So before we even venture into this tool of spiritual technology, I want to invite you to approach prayer with as much humility as you can muster. You're not fixing people, you're healing your mind, okay? And dynamic prayer carries within it this tucked chin. That's what we say in the miracle worker prayer. We tuck our chin, we bow our head, we let this God move through us. And we allow this God to work through us. Wow. That makes us become a channel. We move into that channels prayer. And this dynamic prayer carries within it a little fire too, like the Sacred Heart. It's not a dim, it's not a dull, it's not a rote prayer. It doesn't lay on the page. It lives in the Word. It's a statement of truth fueled by conviction. And it doesn't empathize with the dis-ease, but it rather energizes love. And in that fire of faith, it brings forth form. It brings forth new form, and that's the alchemy. So this new form is rising from the ashes of our lives, and we breathe life into what we thought was once dead. That's the alchemy of prayer. But we don't do this to experience the new form. We do this to experience the new awareness, The form is just sort of the cherry on top. The form will come. The form will be informed by the consciousness. It's demonstrated from a healed mind. But we don't value the form, we celebrate the healed mind. Because that healed mind is like a fragrant and fertile garden that is up for greater good and greater good and greater good. If you heal your mind, all things are possible for you. There's a healing, there's a prosperity, there's a joy underneath the surface that's waiting to be freed. And when we remove the blocks, we listen for and then help to remove the blocks to love through prayer, practice, and patience, all that's left is love. And this is not some sort of poetry, this is principle. This is absolute principle. Form rises from dynamic prayers as the phoenix rises from the flames. But you can't come from it with weak knees and warbly chins. If you want dynamic prayer, you need to have dynamic faith. And if you don't have dynamic faith, don't pray. And I know, again, that sounds a bit off, but I want to explain something to you. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. And you are always praying and demonstrating from the level of your consciousness, and you just might not be conscious of it. You worry, and that worry goes out, finds form, and rushes it back and returns to you evidence of your fears. You blame and shame, and that blame and shame runs out, finds forms, and rushes them back to you in the form to convince you of your blame and shame. You want to think about, who am I blaming and shaming today? Do you think that blame and shame is not birthing form in your life? Do you think that's not tainting the waters of your truth? You complain, you compare, and these two are powerful forms of prayer. And I don't mean to say you do this, we all do this. Despair is prayer. We want to be aware of that. Why? Because what wires together fires together. And when we have thought and emotion, these things wire together and fire together, and what's fired together, what gets fired up, ends up showing up. So that's how we can look at our lives as a demonstration of the prayers that we've been saying, whether those prayers are worry prayers or positive affirmations. And although some of these unconscious prayers demonstrated by unconscious souls that are unaware of the spiritual law, the same souls are in no way unaffected or protected by the law of cause and effect. So whether you know about this law or not, you still are subject to this law. So it's good that you should know this law and that you should attempt to practice this law. You are the effect of your consciousness. Your life is the effect of your consciousness. If you're not in a high vibe of faith and you're in pain, don't pray. And I know, again, I keep saying that, it sounds radical, but it's the truth. If you're in pain, don't pray. Instead, ask someone to pray for you. If you're in pain, don't pray, but stay. Stay in that pain. Stay in that stillness. Just be still with it. Just allow yourself to be still with it. Don't pray away the pain. Having a heartache, not getting what you want, being disappointed, not having the answer or not knowing what to do are very hard angles for the ego. The ego wants instant results. It wants to know the answer. The ego fears deprivation and stillness. But heartache and deprivation and disappointment do not necessarily need to be prayed away at first. At first, they have something to tell you. So just be with them until they're ready to get up and put their coat on and leave the room. Honor your guests. These are your guests. Honor them. And in that honoring, allow yourself to taste the sweet hollowness of deprivation. The world carries deprivation. It's okay. We can live through that. We can experience that. Allow yourself to develop an ear for the choir of silence and solitude that ego sometimes calls loneliness. You can live through that. You can be with that. Allow yourself to be uncomfortable in the vast mystery that overtakes you when you finally accept the fact that you don't know anything. You know? That you don't know anything. That's the moment of sweet humility that delivers so many gifts. So don't pray that away. Let that linger. You came here to feel the grand tapestry of emotions. The song says, I haven't got time for the pain. Well, maybe we do, you know? Maybe we do have a little time. Maybe we should make a little time to just feel it instead of fear it. To not chase it out the door, not rush to reach for the painkillers, not pray it away for fear that the neighbors might find out that we are in fact human. Pain's a good teacher. It's a directional. It's a little gas in the tank. So don't jump to prayer for every shift in the wind. How you pray, why you pray, and what consciousness you pray from will dictate your life and levels of peace and presence, prosperity and power. So wait until you have an awareness of at least peace, and then begin to pray. And pray those prayers until those prayers pray you, and that's when you will know that you have entered into the dynamic. Now, your prayers don't need to be any more poetic or baroque than necessary. This is not a poetry slam, people. Sometimes we hear people doing prayers and it's like, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, how am I even going to catch that? Because it's so, so poetic and so baroque. Don't overdo it. Don't make it special or precious, because it can cause people to think that prayer is special. And it's not. It should feel organic and to the point and everyday and helpful. Keep it clean and keep it simple as you begin. And sometimes prayers are long and luxurious and leaves the listener feeling like they just purchased a ticket to spiritual porn. You know what I mean? So you got people moaning and groaning. That's great, but most of the time, people don't reach that state of ecstasy. Don't fake it. It smells disgusting. I can't believe I'm saying this, but here it is. I'm saying this. Now, don't let your listener feel left out from the prayer, like they're just witnessing you having some holy orgasmic experience. It's not helpful. These are subtle nuances that most teachers probably wouldn't bring up when they're talking to you about prayer, because it might hurt somebody's feelings, or you might start overthinking prayer for whatever reason why these nuances aren't being brought up, or whatever, I'm bringing them up. When you're ready to fully activate a dynamic prayer, try out this affirmative prayer. If you've never tried it before, we're going to walk you through it in this series. And we'll move through it this month, and for the next 5 weeks, actually. We'll move through this 5 stages of affirmative prayer, and then we'll have a visit from Angela Montano, who is a prayer practitioner. She's been a prayer practitioner since 1994, and she is a woman that I pray with, that Bella prays with, and she is a living prayer. You'll want to be around for that final session with her. And one other final word that I guess I should attempt to share with you is to, in your prayers, this is all about the purpose of the prayer. In your prayers, see if you can avoid empathy. And I know, again, that sounds kind of radical as well, but empathy sides with the problem. It says, oh, poor you, oh dear, oh, this is terrible. That's not how Jesus prayed. That's not how Jesus lived. When Jesus spoke the word, he did not soothe or shrink to the ailment. He did not say, oh, please, God, save this woman who's an adulteress. He didn't say, like, help Lazarus, lift him up, poor old Lazarus, give him a freaking break, God. Those were not the prayers. In fact, he said, Lazarus, come forth. That's what he said. Or as the Course would say, let this be your last useless walk to the crucifixion. Come forth, O Holy Son of God. Live in your divinity, not your crucifixion. Are you ready to sharpen your sword and step into that type of dynamic prayer? Lazarus, come forth. That is the declaration. And the other last thing I want to share is that it's a personalized declaration. This is something I love so much about this affirmative prayer, is Jesus in this statement personalizes it. He uses Lazarus' name. This for me is one of the most precious and powerful thing about affirmative prayer. It's personalized. It's a personalized prayer, and we get to hear our name mentioned in prayer. To hear your name thread through a prayer brings in a healing that cannot be examined or explained. It's just beyond. And the purpose of prayer is to remind us that there is a power in the universe, a law of love that works for us as we work it through dynamic prayer. We can harness the power, the words, the emotions, so that our lives sing with sacredness and success. We are heir to embodying a continual experience of vitality, of prosperity, of healing, of joy, of extravagance, that you will have life. And as Jesus said in his sermon of the Good Shepherd, that you will have life and have it more abundantly. That's the kind of dynamic prayer I want you to deliver, I want you to deserve, I want you to demonstrate and to embody. You are a living, dynamic prayer spoken by the sweet and sacred lips of God herself. Don't be afraid to step in, to sink in, to sing into your prayer. That's the word.
Maureen, I don't know if you could have seen my little fire emoji for you there, but it's been popping up in the chat from people. Man, oh man. In addition to that, if you notice how many people were doing that, I've got this going. There's stuff here to unpack. Thank you so much. Talking about the dynamicness of our community and of prayer, I'm going to pass it over to Mari now to tell us about all the exciting things happening at Speakeasy.
Yes, good morning. My name is Mari D'Alessio, and I am the lead here at Speakeasy for Communications and Education. We are a virtual spiritual community. We have a full calendar of events throughout the week just to support your spiritual journey. Some of the events coming up this week, today after service at 12 Central Time, we are going to have a Q&A meet and greet for any of the ladies that might be interested in our Wild Irish Rose Retreat to Ireland, and then you can meet me out over there. So if you're interested in getting a little bit more information, join us at 12 Central, so a little bit after service. Today's Sunday at 8:18 Central Time, and on Thursday as well, we have time. It's called Sacred Sanctuary, and it's a time for prayer and meditation. This is led by Jeannie Laporte. Thank you so much, Jeannie. And it's a time where you can really hone in and really come within in peace and do some prayer and meditation. So we invite you to that. That it's a free offering. Throughout the week, we have daily yoga, dance, or Tai Chi. So I invite you to check our calendar because coming up also, we are going to have, finally it's here, the registration for the new cycle of A Course in Abundance. That is going to be starting in September, September 26th. So registration is now open, and if you go to our calendar of events, you will see the calendar, the link to the calendar of events. Joni's going to put it in the chat, or you can go to speakeasyspiritualcommunity.com. All the Zoom details, registration, times, and all the information for all those events are there. Also, we have other events going on, so check out that calendar. Just a reminder for those who might be new to us, we are a non-for-profit organization, and we exist on the generosity of our members and our guests. So if you felt fed today by the message that Maureen presented to us, I just invite you to go in prayer, go within and see what is yours to share with us. The link to our giving is also on the chat. And so see what is for you to share. And we appreciate your generous support for all of those who have been tithing to us. We appreciate it. Your support really helps us to keep bringing speakers and musicians to our community and adding new programs. So thank you so much. And I pass it back to Kate.
Thanks, Mari. So much exciting things happening. Whew, okay, here we are. Our time to actually have a conversation about what we've heard. And this is what makes Speakeasy so unique. Here, we want you to speak easily, to dip into finding your voice and your truth, to share your thoughts, your inspirations, your awareness, and your questions here in community. When you feel called to share a question or a comment, please raise your virtual hand, which is located in the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen. And also, if you can leave your video on when chatting, please do so, because we want to know you and see you. So here's the deal, Maureen. I could ask a lot of questions as I took a lot of notes, but as I was sharing, I noticed so many people like physically leaning in. And so I want to turn it over and see, does anyone want to kick it off with a question here? Does anyone have a raised hand that we can call on? Sherry.
Good morning, Maureen and family.
Hi, Sherry.
I took 4 pages of handwritten notes, just so you know. Thank you so much for this talk, because this is a comfort with this has been something that I have been struggling with.
Mm.
And I feel like you touched on so many good points for me as far as viewpoint, consciousness, just everything you said that you thought would be effective was effective.
Mm.
And to break it out into not taking the victim when you feel like saying help, that is not the time to pray. That is so helpful, because that is the time that I feel most like praying. That's like your go-to. And the points you made about just sitting with the pain and the discomfort and asking, what or why is this happening? What am I here to see with this? What can I learn from this, before pleading for it to be taken away from you? Just so helpful. Everything about the talk was, I'm just looking forward to the next few weeks,
Mhm.
because if this was the kickoff, I really can't imagine how much better it can get. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you so much.
I just have to tell you, Sherry, your consciousness and your voice and your vernacular, your knowing. You know, if you don't know Sherry, she's written many books. So the same tools and talents that have gone into that are the similar ones that will go into prayer. And so you already have as we all do, already have all of those things. And now it's like we get to put breath into it. And I guess I would say too that I was surprised as you when I heard that we shouldn't pray when we're in pain, because it makes complete sense to me now. You know what I mean? But yeah, to just entertain it, to just be with it. When I see somebody in prayer, have had the have said, like, do you want prayer, instead of just being okay with listening.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just supposed to listen instead of cleaning it up with tissues and making it go away. I know there's a growth point for me. So, thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of practitioners in our community, Bella Gordon uh, and Jeannie Laporte, and people who have gone through the practitioner program. Barbara Clevenger probably went through the similar thing at Unity. So there's a lot of practitioners in our community, and then there's also people in our community who are not licensed practitioners, but who have taken the prayer classes, and they are Kate Miller, another amazing practitioner. If during this time that you are moving into your own relationship with prayer, you can reach out to them, to me, to them, and ask for prayer. There's my husband Will with his hand up. Hi, babe.
What you said about praying from the sort of victim consciousness, it reminded me of, for those of you who don't know, I teach a high school philosophy class. I'm not a philosophical scholar, but I've learned a little bit. And there's this philosopher, Baruch Spinoza, who was ultimately excommunicated and kicked out of his family and kicked out of his spiritual community for heresy and so forth. But he kind of rejected what at the time was the standard form of Judeo-Christian prayer, like begging God for things that, by definition, we don't deserve. But if you'll do me, God, some special favor, if I pray just right, then I'll, glorify your name or whatever. And he thought that was ridiculous. He thought it was kind of like mythology. And he saw honest prayer is trying to more like listen to God, listen to the laws of the universe, and try to figure out through observation what God's will for us is, and then try to live in harmony with that and live in appreciation for that. And at that time, it didn't go over very well. But I feel like what you're saying is sort of in keeping with that sort of philosophy of not begging for crumbs from a fickle God, but for I think you just said it, more like listening to God. I guess, okay, here's a question for you. Do you draw a distinction between meditation and prayer? And if so, what do you think that is?
Do I draw? Yeah, I do. I feel like meditation is a settling in and an integration. We are, allowing all that is God to settle into us, and all that is not God to be excused from us. And so to just stay in that present moment, because meditation brings us to this present moment. Prayer is a spiritual tool that assists us in, I think it's best done when it begins with a moment of stillness, and then it sort of helps to unearth ourselves or our brother from the illusion of separation. Meditation feels like it is going more cleanly to God without a purpose, but just to go to God. Prayer is a purposeful tool to assist in unearthing us from our separation. And can you pray to God without having to unearth yourself? Yeah, sure, you could have prayers of gratitude and celebration, but those prayers of gratitude and celebration are always going to bring you into a deeper awareness of your connection with the divine, where meditation is that wordless state. And it's almost like you could say that the prayer is for the minister who's working with the law, and meditation is for the mystic who's working with the consciousness. And Ernest Holmes was quoted by Reverend Beckwith this past weekend, and he actually said that Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of this prayer process, he said that work with the law, which is what we're doing in prayer, until you don't need the law anymore. And then once you don't need the law, you're just in presence. You're just in love. And so that's what I would say. Can your life be an eternal meditation where you never let go of that divine connection? Yeah, we've seen people live like that. So I hope that was helpful. Yeah, so, but what I want to say about that love and law is that we might have the tendency to judge ourselves if we're still using the law. Don't, because we all vacillate between these consciousnesses within a day. We'll wake up, in that channel consciousness. This day is going to be great. And then we see somebody on Facebook and we're like, oh, I want what she's having. I don't have it. So now I have to get that. I'm going to manifest that. We move into warrior. And then we look at our bank account. We're like, I'll never have that. And we move into victim. So it's like within a day, we can roll through these consciousnesses and we can move from mystic to minister. And it's nothing to be ashamed about. That's the human condition. And it gives your brother an opportunity to help you. Joni, you have your hand up?
Yes. I'm going to ask you to revisit and talk more about the Lazarus. I heard you say Jesus was commanding, raise above your blocks, the illusion of death, maybe,
Yes.
and claim God's will for you. Is
Yes.
that it? Is that a little bit of it? Or can you talk more about it? Because I used to think, oh yeah, that's the only thing Jesus does is raise people from the dead. It's not my thing. But when I hear it differently today, it isn't, fix me and, whatever you were saying. It's more like Jesus is reminding us, raise above that block, whatever the block to your illusion is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could talk to Kate Miller in a death cafe once a month. There are 1,000 forms of death,
Right.
and we want to rise above it. So every time somebody walks into a 12-step program, they can come in like a dried up old houseplant that has been around the block 52,000 times, and you'll think that person's never going to reach into their optimal state. They've sabotaged it beyond hope. And then you watch them rise from the dead. You could feel like a divorce is a death. You could feel like, a child's moving out of your house. Empty nesters can feel that death. So, he's talking about anything that we use to harm ourselves. But just like I said in the beginning of this sermon, is like that point of evolution, which feels like when the egg is cracking open and there's a death happening, that's a holy moment. just like winter, like we shouldn't have a hierarchy for summer, winter, and fall. That's a holy moment, and it's a rich and ripe moment for spiritual evolution. So you don't want to chase that away. You want to be with that.
Thank you. I noticed Kate is saying, think of it metaphorically. Can you guys talk about that or add Kate? There's, okay, hold, there we go. There, thank you.
So what I meant by think of it metaphorically, think of Lazarus being dead metaphorically. So was he dead, or was he dead to the knowing of his true reality, his godness? And so was Jesus saying to him, I see and know the God of you. Yes. Rise up and be witness to that. So that's what I meant by think of it metaphorically.
Yes.
That when we are praying with someone, that we are seeing their truth. We are not seeing their condition. The condition is something that they're in the midst of, but I'm seeing and knowing their truth, that they are one with God, that they are whole, perfect, complete. And that is the truth that I know them as, and I see them as that, and that is reflected to them through my eyes, and then they can start to see themselves differently.
Oh, wow. That's a real, another Bible thing reinterpreted from this Catholic girl. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. I'm a Catholic girl too.
Yeah, and Kate is an amazing prayer practitioner who does yoga nidra, and she's the death doula. But we shared an office at the Bodhi Spiritual Center, and yeah, that's exactly. I love how you put that, Kate. And here's the thing: that's why it's not precious, is because someday I will come into Kate, probably many days, and say, Kate, and she'll pray me up. And on very rare days, Kate would come to me and say, so one of us was a little more anchored. But you know, if we made it precious or a hierarchy, you want to give and receive prayer. You want to be able to give and receive prayer.
Here. But yeah, thank you so much, Kate Miller, for touching on that, and Maureen, because, you know, in my own spiritual walk, that was one of the most, illuminating moments when I first found my way to new thought. Spirituality was witnessing and being present to a whole new type of prayer, and one that there was a knowing of, like you were saying, Kate, so beautifully, someone's wholeness, not their truth, not the circumstance, but the truth of the being. And it really rocked me. And so I just offer that up to community today. If anyone else has had those, those ahas or wows around a connection to, again, like you were saying, the consciousness, not the form in prayer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can I add?
In order to practice this, you're going to have to make an effort to practice it. And so during this 5-week series, I would invite you, if you want a prayer practitioner, if you want a prayer partner, to go ahead and put a heart up, and we'll try and keep track of those people who want to engage in prayer practice with someone else, and we'll connect you. Put a heart up, and then we'll make it possible for you to pray together. Maybe we'll even do what we did with the abundance class, where we'll do a Thursday morning drop-in where people can practice their prayers, which Bella was doing earlier.
In completing it with how two are healed is and Kate metaphorically help me, is, or all of you, is when we claim or guide or see this person as the Son of God or God's will, we're connecting with that and being one with that. How are we healed? How, you remember you said healing.
Course in Miracles says that an idea shared is strengthened. So when you're sharing this idea, it's coming through the channel and blesses the channel first and twice, because it comes through you, and then you also get to see it heal your brother. So it's double double the, what do they say? Double the juice?
Double,
Double the pleasure.
double the pleasure. That's what it is. Yeah. Oh, this is starting to make sense. Thank you.
Kate, did you want to add to that?
No, just calling in Justine. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, thank you so much, Maureen. I was so moved by, prayer is something that has, growing up Jewish, you know, I found it very alienating, but I knew I loved the songs and I love that I can still hear them and sing them, and it is prayer. But I didn't make that connection until recently, that prayer is in so many things. And your emphasis on not only just praying from the things that I want or when I'm in pain, but I do love this connection, and this is something so new for me. I wasn't raised in a family where we got to sit in pain. Like, you ran from it, you fixed it, you controlled it. And being involved in a family situation that is sort of a crisis right now, and how to keep turning back to be a vessel of love, these reminders and coming back here and doing the course with my Ireland ladies is really just helping so much. And I when you talk about Lazarus, and that's really alienating to me, but I understand the metaphor now. Like, you're connecting those dots for me in an interesting way, but it still kind of goes, I tweak out a little bit. But then you talk about prayer porn, and I'm like, okay, well, that.
And just so you know, in Catholic school, we didn't study the Bible.
Right.
So, I just kind of ended up dipping into that book in equal measure. When I first started my church, this young girl, I asked all the people in our community, which was like 25 at the time, what do you want from your church? And this little girl got up and she said, I want you to preach from the Bible. And I was like, okay. I was like, my hands are going to burn off, but I'll try. So I just know that, what alienates me is something that initiates me. It's all the same. The Kabbalah, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, these are all fingers pointing to God. And so we all come different ways and at different times and different programs, and it's all perfect, and we don't have to annihilate or fear any of it, even if it's been used, to annihilate. There's still so much holiness in at the very core of its being, there is love. So, but thank you for saying that. That's an issue that a lot of Jewish women and men have when they start studying A Course in Miracles. It's Christian, and I think it's also a part of the lesson of, like, don't solve the problem at the level of the problem. Get to the content. John Ruiz has his hand up.
I was just curious, when you talk about not praying when you're in pain or suffering or anything like that, but I know in the obstacles to peace, or third obstacles are attraction to death, and it talks in there about a prayer to just take this from me, it says, and look upon it and judge it for me. And I think that can help us relieve some of our pressure, like you say, to ask to remove it from me, because we always should ask, above all else, thy will be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just curious as your remarks on that.
Yeah, take this from me as a surrender prayer. And I'm at that point where I'm surrendering it to a higher power. So there's a place within me that has acknowledged that I don't have to stay in this pain on my own, that there is a principle and a power. And that's where you will feel the most pain before you actually say those words. And so that's why in the affirmative prayer, we begin with God is, and that there is no spot that God is not. But yeah, and listen, don't believe everything I say. I don't have all the answers. I do love the questions, though. This is food for thought. But don't think too much about it. Yeah. Sinead, hi.
Oh, I just loved it, Maureen. It was just amazing. And it just reminded me of so many things. It's like that prayer is this relationship that you have, for me anyway, because growing up, my granny used to pray to Our Lady, but we never called her Our Lady. It was herself. So if you were young, like as a teenager, and you'd go to my nana, and I'd say, you might be going through something, and she'd say, well, did you ask herself? Sure, why would you not ask herself first? And then when we all had our babies, it was like, oh, sure, herself is here with us, and if you weren't in the family, everyone would think you meant somebody else. So it was this real personal relationship with God. And that's what really prayer was this personal relationship. And when you were talking about not being in the victim, it reminded me of, when a couple of years ago, my son was really unwell when he was a baby. And someone said to me, I was doing prayer with somebody, and they said to me, you don't pray that God will change the cards that you were dealt. You ask God to help you accept the cards you've been dealt, and that you can learn how to play the ones that you've been dealt. And that really was for me, that in a way, affirmative prayer, because I wasn't asking that we weren't going to be sitting in a hospital and having my son unwell. I was like asking that, let me hand this over and surrender. And then let me be able to accept whatever your will is, whatever was to happen with his illness, that I would accept that. Because then it's like you're able to hand it over to that higher power, because it's not me who's going to fix it, and it's not me who's going to stand in the way of whatever thy will should be. So that just reminded me of that.
Yes, 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 yes. And that is building the consciousness, the old consciousness of the mother who said, if this should happen, it will kill me, has now gotten back up. And Lazarus is awake and alive in you, that says a new woman is here that didn't know that she had this capability to stand in this and be blessed by it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's wonderful to activate that dynamic prayer and to recognize how you've already activated it, because it's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you.
How's your son?
He's great. Yeah. So we had a miracle that night, because he got really unwell when he was about 3. So this is where, for me, prayer becomes this living practice. So we were in the hospital, and he was about 3, so it's about 10 years ago. And they were ready to airlift him for brain surgery. He was really unwell, and he probably wouldn't have made it. And I remember praying and just saying, that I have to hand this over, and whatever you wish to do with him, then I'll accept whatever is to happen. And he woke the next morning, and they did an MRI, a brain scan of him, and they sent us home. And a week later, they called us back in, because all of the scans had to go to America, because they actually just couldn't find the brain cysts. It had disappeared. So he was the miracle. And even the pediatrician said that's what took us so long to get these results back, because we had to send them to America to make sure we weren't misreading them. So we went from sitting in hospital, being ready to be airlifted for him to have brain surgery. Without me being there, it would have been a 2-hour drive away. I couldn't have gone with him. I would have had to accept that he would have gone in for brain surgery. And in that moment, I just handed it over and said, God, whatever is your will, I will accept it. I will accept whatever it is that has to happen. And he is fine ever since. He's living his best life, and has never, ever had an issue about it ever since. So
Whew, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's one for the books. Yeah.
That's one for the books. Yeah.
What's his name?
Oshin.
Oshi?
Oshin, yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful name.
It's an old Irish name, yeah. Oshin.
Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, you'll get to meet him when you're here, so you'll see him.
The miracle boy.
The miracle boy, yeah.
It's great. And I am expecting that we will really get to go to the deep end. We hopefully collected those hearts, and we'll connect you with your prayer partner. Maybe we'll have a check-in once a week. And we have amazing teachers who are coming up to help us facilitate these conversations on affirmative prayer. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here. God bless. Have a beautiful day. Bye.
Thank you, Maureen.
Bye.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye, Josh. Thank you so much.